Pushing sexuality onto kids meaning what? Meaning conversion therapy, meaning conversion camps, meaning taking gay kids to straight camps and torturing and abusing them into being heterosexual. Yes, I think that is fucking awful and shouldn't happen. But something tells me that that's not what you're in a gripe about. See, what is so funny about this comment is that you did exactly what I was talking about, which is that you allow these politicians to inflame your prejudices in order to believe something is happening that is not actually happening, so that you become distracted. The actual thing that is happening is that the highest rate of child mortality in the United States is gun violence, school shooting. But instead, you let your prejudices being your homophobia, be inflamed, your passions be inflamed by these politicians who tell you that in schools, kids are being influenced to be LGBTQ. It's not a thing. It's not possible. If it was possible, then the gay kids that went to the straight camps would have become straight, but they didn't. If it was possible, then since time immemorial, there would be no homosexual people. If that was the case, then why is it in the Islamic Republic of Iran, okay, which is the apex of religiousness and conservatism, where kids are taught about hijab and Islam, why is it that there's such a big LGBTQ population in Iran? Why are there so many queer kids in Iran? Why are people still being hanged for being gay in Iran? Because sexuality happens despite the influence, not because of it, okay? So your kids are not being taught to be LGBTQ in schools. That is a myth. That is an illusion.
Okay, so kids are not being taught to be LGBT. They are being taught that LGBT people exist and that they deserve peace and respect and the right to live as they want. The fact some graphic pro-LGBT or biographical LGBT books exist in libraries says nothing about what kids are being taught. Risque books have always been in libraries. That does not mean they are being used to teach kids. It is just part of the free exchange of ideas libraries have always represented. The fact is, most kids do not go into libraries at all, ever, looking for books. If they do, you should be thankful they are readers. What kids are exposed to regularly is hardcore pornography on their phones or on the phones of their peers. That is 10,000 times worse and more graphic and shocking than even the worst books found in any library by the backwards library trolling bigots who spend all of their time in libraries looking for things to freak out about. Schools try to deal with what kids are encountering today and make sense of it in a healthy way. They also try to educate kids about boundaries because many kids who are molested because they are ignorant of human sexuality. Thus, a rudimentary understanding of human sexuality is actually a defense mechanism for kids, because ignorance leaves them open to being manipulated in inappropriate ways that they don't understand, which is what happened to the author of the dialogue you're listening to right now, me. I was preyed upon as a very young child, at around 5 or 6 years of age, I don't remember exactly when, in the foster care system, because I did not understand what was happening to me or that it was wrong, let alone why it was wrong. Education is power, and the sooner kids learn this stuff in a professional way, the better equipped they are to defend themselves from sexual predators or even just other sexually confused kids, and what is and is not appropriate behavior in that regard. Between 5% and 10% of all children report being sexually abused at some point, and ignorance of what was happening to them is a big factor. So schools today are trying to educate kids to be able to defend themselves and also make them aware that LGBT people exist, who and what they are, and that they deserve to be treated with respect and dignity. Books used to teach this stuff to kids typically come with lesson plans. If it does not come with a lesson plan, then it's probably not being used to teach, but it's just a book in the library which has tens of thousands of books, or hundreds of thousands of books in some cases. So remember this when some bulging-eyed, frothing-at-the-mouth bigot points to some graphic book he dug up after hundreds of hours of OCD like digging through books in the library, all just so he can scream, "Aha! Look at what these perverts are teaching our children!" when in most cases it is just a book in the library. Libraries cannot read and screen every single book they receive, so they rely on publisher ratings. Thus, risque books will slip through the cracks. If you find one that you think is inappropriate for a school library, tell the school. Ask for it to be removed. But remember, not everybody thinks the same way as you do. many parents support frank, open discussion of sexuality for the reasons already discussed here. But again, if it does not have a lesson plan, then it's probably not being used to teach your kids. And if some random teacher is using it, that is an individual teacher issue and not a systemic issue. But whatever you do, relax and be kind.
Okay, so your kids are not being taught to be LGBTQ in schools. That is a myth. That is an illusion that is being peddled by the demagogues that want to distract you from the real thing that is threatening your kids, right? Which is gun crime. Your children go to school and they are immersed in heteronormativity. It may be that on occasion there's one book that's about two mummies instead of a mummy and a daddy, but that is not going to make your child grow up to become two mummies unless your kid was always going to be two mummies. Do you see what I'm saying? Because it is not infectious. Did you know that LGBTQ youth are 40% less likely to commit suicide with just one accepting adult? That is the only thing that is intended to do. And even that, you want to take that away. Why? Because you are so enamored by your politicians who continue to convince you that this is the real issue in America. Drag is the real issue in America. Meanwhile, kids are dying every single day in school shootings. But do you know why you won't talk about that? Because you would rather them not come home at all than come home gay.
I'm a strong proponent of the Second Amendment. I believe the right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. That's the one right that's listed in the Constitution that uses that very specific affirmative language, shall not be infringed.
It's also the one right that uses the phrase well-regulated.
Correct, when it's talking about the militia and the state.
So by the way, just for clarity's sake,
yeah.
I'm not against the Second Amendment. I don't want to ban guns. You want to ban drag show readings to children.
To minors, yes.
Why?
Why?
What are you protecting?
Why can we prohibit children from voting, those under 18 from voting?
Why are you
but
banning?
Also that?
Is that free speech? Are you infringing on that performer's free speech?
They can continue to exercise their free speech, just not in front of a child.
Why?
Because the government does have a responsibility to protect.
I'm sorry?
The government does have a responsibility in certain instances to
What's
protect
the
children.
leading cause of death amongst children in this country? And I'm going to give you a hint. It's not drag show readings to children.
Correct, yes.
So what is it?
I'm presuming you're going to say it's firearms.
No, I'm not going to say it like it's an opinion. That's what it is. It's firearms. More than cancer, more than car accidents. And what you're telling me is you don't mind infringing free speech to protect children from this amorphous thing that you think of. But when it comes to children that have died, you don't give a flying fuck to stop that because that shall not be infringed. That is hypocrisy at its highest order.
So I made a video about how conservative politicians are pushing this idea that homosexuality is being taught to kids in schools as a distraction from the fact that the real danger kids are facing in schools is, of course, school shootings. And I was hit with a tragic clapback.
It is possible for people to be concerned about more than one thing at a time.
Yes, it is possible for people to be concerned with more than one thing at the same time. However, here's the thing that went way over your head. Coming closer, you can really hear. They're not concerned with school shootings. They're not concerned with gun violence. The words that you're saying make it sound like you've never actually traveled to the USA before. People that are peddling this ideology are usually conservatives, and conservatives are the same people that are against gun regulation, okay? So they're not concerned with regulating access to guns. They're actually concerned with not regulating access to guns. See, the thing is, if these right-wing politicians and their supporters were concerned with gun control and gun safety, that would be observed ipso facto, right? Meaning that we would have less mass shootings, less, maybe no school shootings. The reason I had to make that video in the first place is because they're not concerned with gun control. So I'm very glad for you that you made the astute observation that people can be concerned with more than one thing at the same time. But I'm very, very sad for you that you missed the glaring, smack you in the face observation that they're not.
Most Americans actually are not, as one said, enamored with their politicians. Quite the opposite in most cases.